What's up, everybody? So it's Wednesday Night Warrior. It's currently Tuesday afternoon, but I wanted to do a video on the banned and restricted list updates and kind of talk about like my thoughts on them, where my head's at. I read the full article. A lot of people won't read the entire thing from Wizards of the Coast, and what I find is that I like reading and listening to Wizards' thoughts on it. Um, So, for those who don't know, we have Aya being banned, Ancestral Visions and Sword of the Meek being unbanned, all of those in Modern, and then Lodestone Golem being restricted. Um, let's start with Modern, and then we can talk about Vintage. Lodestone Golem being restricted in Vintage, I should say. So, a few things. The first thing is, wow, like, good job, Wizards, on banning a card from Eldrazi. I mean, Aaron Forsyth basically told us he was going to do it, and I'm really glad that he followed through. I think that a card needed to be banned. Um, I don't know that anybody really cared if it was Temple or I. Like, I know that Tron players really like I in their deck and things like that, but I don't know that hurting Tron is like a bad thing. Tron could be very dominant in a format without the Eldrazi and with. I mean, I don't think it's a problem to hurt Tron. I don't know if it would have been the best deck, but I don't think it's a problem. I don't think they need it. And I'm pretty happy with Temple being gone from the Eldrazi deck, so that's totally fine with me. The other thing that we think about is, does the Eldrazi deck still exist? Maybe those cards are really efficient. It's possible that a Tron Eldrazi deck suddenly exists, and the like a green red deck with Ancient Stirrings and stuff like that, and World Breaker. It's possible that that deck actually exists still, and yeah, that's sweet if that deck does exist. And I think that somebody will find a way to play with these cheap, efficient creatures that you might be able to play a little bit early. I've heard people talking about something as simple as Vesuva. So hopefully somebody figures it out and that deck can still exist and be a normal part of the metagame. I mean, so many of those cards just don't care about Lightning Bolt, and that's what's important. But if you lose the Mimic Draw, um, or the really early Thought-Knot Seers, then yeah, that's good for the format. I think that having giving decks an aggro deck, maybe even a great draw with Thought-Knot Seer could be good for the format. So glad to see a card gone, but hopefully the deck stays around in one form or another. Um, we have some unbannings. We have Ancestral Vision, something that I personally have wanted unbanned for a very, 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 very long time. Yeah, I think it's great. Is it gonna shake up the metagame significantly? Probably not. So one of the things, as somebody who plays Charlotte's Book a lot, one of the things that happens is you will suspend a uh, a, a Ancestral Visions, and you'll put it in suspend on turn one. That'll be your first play. It is kind of like your opponent watches themselves lose the game, and it can be frustrating. The reason that that's true is because you have very powerful things that you're doing to hold off your opponent, interact with your opponent while that thing is ticking down. And blue control decks in Modern don't have that. Blue mid range decks in Modern don't currently have that. So we'll see if Ancestral Visions makes a huge leap. Um, it's a great start to letting blue slower decks have a place in the format. Hopefully, somebody can figure something out to make it great. That would be exciting for me. I have no problems with the unbanning. I think everybody wants something like this unbanned and wants to be able to play with these blue decks. Next up, we had the unbanning of Sword of the Meek. My initial reaction to this was pretty upset. I personally don't like Sword of the Meek. I think that it's extremely unfun. I saw Sam Black tweeted something about how when Sword of the Meek was great, there was no abrupt decay and things like that. And as somebody who plays Shardless in Legacy, I can tell you abrupt decay is just not enough sometimes, and they just get too much value. That being said, I for a very long time have been a lover of Tezzerator control. And I think that it's a sweet deck, and I hope that the deck can exist. I hope that maybe this is another reason to help blue control decks out and make those decks viable. And if so, that's great. That's what we want. That you couldn't want more than Modern than that. So I think that in the end, even though I think it's unfun, I think it's probably good for the format and help make the format great. Hashtag make modern great again. I think that it's still a great thing. So, um, would I have done anything different? Yeah, I mean, I would. I would unban Jace the Mind Sculptor and Bloodbraid Elf and Green Sun Zenith and ban Dryad Arbor. I think that would make the Zoo decks, the Jund decks, and the Control decks this rock paper scissors thing where the combo decks can come in and fight for a space in that format. And because of that, the aggro decks like Affinity and they all find their space in that format. But I think that creating a shell or a solid base for what the format needs to look like. I don't think that the best decks in the format being Affinity, Infect, and Tron are healthy. But I think that Jund, Jace the Mind Sculptor Control, and Wild Nacatl Aggro, I think that is the basis of a great format. And then you have things like Affinity who come in and they surprise you, or things like Infect that come in and surprise you, or things like Angel's Grace that come in and surprise you. And I think that that's good. I think that creating this rock paper scissors effect into this world, and then having surprise decks come in is what makes Legacy great. I think the things that make Legacy great. By the way, again, Top gets no banning. I don't understand it, but in Modern, I think that it is missing something. I think that it is missing the great decks. And I think that unbanning Bloodbraid Elf, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and Green Sun Zenith, and then banning things like Dryad Arbor are going to be helpful. And I would even unban Dig Through Time. I don't think that card needs to be banned in Modern. Does that make Delver good? Probably. I would unban Preordain too. That would make the Delver even better. I think that that's fine. I think it's a problem for those decks to exist. And I don't think that they're too good. I don't think that they keep anything out. Like, I think that I would also ban Eidolon of the Great Revel, because I think that the important thing about Modern, I understand that like they want to shake it up for the pros, because we not me but we as a Magic community have asked for Modern Pro Tours, and so because of that they have to cater to those Modern players, and they have to want they have to make the not the Modern players, the Pro players, and so they have to make the format different every time they do a Modern Pro Tour. And so that can be hard. That can be hard for Wizards to achieve. But I think the best thing for the format is to create a world where there are 3 great decks for the pros to choose from. And I think that, my thoughts on Modern have been spoken clearly on the podcast. And hopefully one day we get that. Maybe Ancestral Visions is the start to that. Maybe it is the start to making Modern great again. And I remember one time it was my favorite format. And I hope that it can be again. So overall, I think that all of the changes that were made are net positives. I think they're all great. So, even though I personally hate Sword of the Meek, I still think it's worth exploring that and seeing if you can create a control deck out of that. So, it's cool. So Vintage. So I play a little Vintage. I am not going to pretend that I'm a huge Vintage player, that I play Vintage all the time, because I don't. Most of the Vintage that I play with Casey, and sometimes, on a day where I'm like, I really miss playing with Power, I'll play with some Vintage, and it's fun. Playing Vintage is like so much fun, and I watch the Vintage Super League just like I'm sure a lot of you do, and I think that it's funny how much shakeup there has been in Vintage, and I think that the Vintage Super League has put a highlight on the format and a spotlight there where people break it. I think that they legitimately break Vintage now, whereas before, like, you could play your Oath decks and your whatever. You could really play whatever you wanted, and then things like Merfolk and Delver would win the worlds, and then people would start playing those. And I think that's great. But I do think that the reason that we keep seeing Vintage being broken is because of the amount of time people are dedicating to Vintage now, whereas before they just weren't dedicating as much time to that format, and we didn't see these things. I know some people wanted Dark Petition banned. And it's like, well, I mean, and these people wanted things from Stormband like before, and it's funny because you're like, the whole problem is shops, and it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for Wizards because it's like, this is a format we didn't even have to pay attention to before, and now that we have these these leagues, and and these things firing in this Magic Online format. I actually don't know if they have leagues. I might just be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. But now that we have this Magic Online format that people are actually playing, people care about it, and it's not the same amount of people that cared about it before. Vintage has always been great. I remember playing Vintage back in the day with a guy named Adam who had all the Vintage decks proxied, and it was so fun. You know, Tezzeret was my favorite deck, and it still is. Like, to this day, I still love Tezzeret Control. I don't know. I think that the format is great. I think that Shops is so unfun that you have to ban something from it if the world, being the Magic Online community, doesn't like it. And if it's not fun to watch in the Vintage Super League, which is right now a huge deal for Wizards. Randy Buehler did something amazing where he got all of us to watch that. That's an achievement. He got everyone watching it. People talk at your local shop about the Vintage Super League, and they would never have talked about Vintage before that. And so, go Randy for really, and go Wizards too, for putting it on Magic Online where this can happen, and really creating this thing of beauty. You get to watch some cool turns of Magic. I can't tell you how sweet it is to watch people play Gush. It's really cool. So, but in the end, I think that banning Lodestone Golem, some people wanted Factory gone. I'm not sure what's correct. I would think that it's Lodestone Golem is correct. I think that you want Factory in Vintage. But yeah, I think that overall, net positive. I don't think anyone expected any unbannings. I know in Legacy, people expected, and have expected Top to go for a long time. And I don't know why Wizards hasn't pulled the trigger on it. It's weird. I think that they should. I have no idea why they haven't. But overall, everything was positive. I'm really happy with all of the changes. I have things that I would do, like Top and Legacy gone, Blood Red Elf, Jace, Green Sun Zenith coming back into Modern, even Preordain coming back into Modern and Dig Through Time, with Dryad Arbor being banned and probably Eidolon of the Great Revel being banned. I know PV wants something from Affinity gone, and I know others want Blood Moon gone, but I don't know that those bannings do anything other than make you happy, because it makes your sideboards better, it makes your main decks better. I don't think that those things are helpful for a format. They're helpful for individuals who like certain decks, but I don't think that it's helpful for the format. Whereas, things that are unfun are helpful for a format when you get rid of them. So Eidolon and Top, for example, those aren't fun cards. So getting rid of them makes the format more fun. Burn decks could have existed without Eidolon, and they will exist without Eidolon. I think the Masters of Modern podcast have talked about this, where they want something from Burn banned. And I think that it's true. I think that Burn is so unfun, and so many people play it, that it shouldn't be, with the number of people playing a deck, you don't want it to be as good as Burn. Too many people play it. There's 6 people playing it at every PPTQ. That's 32 people. That's a huge chunk of the field that you don't want to be there. And I think the same thing is true about Top and Legacy. There are too many Top players, and they have to activate them, and they have to make the tournament go long. So I think for all those reasons, those are the changes that I would make. But I think everything Wizards did is a net positive. So go Wizards for what they did. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys would think about what you would do in these individual formats, and I'd be happy to listen and discuss. I want Modern to be great, and I just love Magic overall. So thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys all soon.